you will only have this short runway opportunity for so long until you are past it and you go full time in your business, you quit your job, you start traveling, you start doing all this stuff. And then what happens is your relatability starts to get further and further away from the average person. Right now, if you're in a job, you are highly relatable because most likely your audience is also in a job. It's very important that you understand how to market this business when you are still doing similar things to others. Let's make moves. Okay, so here's the question. When you define momentum, everybody has, different definitions to different words. Even though we're saying the same word, we think different things. So for you, what do you feel momentum actually represents? If you were to say you're in momentum versus not in momentum, tell me what the difference is between the two.
Right now, I would say it's the quality of the conversation that I'm having and the signups and sales that are following with that. But yeah, before that, for me comes that I'm feeling good, that I'm aligned with everything that I'm doing in my business.
Beautiful. So you'll notice here that there's two sides of what you're saying, right? There's the side that you can control how you feel, how you're showing up, you're in alignment. And then there's also the other side, which is more external, which is the conversations, quality of conversations, and so on, right? So when you fall out of alignment, according to what you're saying, are you no longer following through on the things that you have been doing to make you feel in alignment and good? Is there a correlation? Have you noticed that?
No, I think if I'm understanding it right, I think I'm still doing what I used to be doing, but for some reasons the leads or the quality of the leads go disappear, or yeah, I don't know
Are
what.
you running ads or are you doing organic?
No, I run ads.
You run ads. So yeah, it is to answer one of your questions in here, it is normal for things to shift and to change. Yes, it is normal. Sometimes it has to do with the way that the actual social media platforms update like their algorithms. That could be an indicator. Sometimes it could be economics. There's usually a correlation between buying and spending habits when they release like inflation reports or like that kind of stuff in the stock market. There's a correlation with some of that stuff. Also with spending around different times of the year. Like right now, we're getting closer to the holidays. There's Black Friday. Everybody's trying to get your money and sell you something. And sometimes people prioritize those consumer things versus investing in a business. So yes, to answer your question, that does happen. Now, what you can do is control as many of the controllables as possible. And whenever you have an ad that is performing well or a process that is working well for you, 80% of your energy should be on doing that process. But you shouldn't allow you to get so comfortable where you're like, this process is always going to work, or this ad is always going to generate me quality leads, right? That's the mistake a lot of people make is they go from testing, creating to cruising to chilling to like backseat approach and just enjoying the ads working well rather than continuing those habits that create you possibly the next ad that works even better than the current ad. So my recommendation for you is 80% of your time do what works and 20% of your time make sure that you allocate it to new ideas, being creative, testing different processes, changing your script, and having something that is more of a proactive approach to when maybe the thing that is working the best stops working, because then you're prepared, right? Like, for example, I know lots of people that run ads and they'll have one or two creatives that they've made that they're running as an ad, and then they're not continuing to record new ads and write new copy and test new things because they're like, this ad is great. It's getting me 3 to 5 leads a day. That's good enough. Does that make sense? But you're technically
Mhm.
always trying to beat the current best way you're doing something, 20% of your time, money, and energy towards that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally makes sense.
And the other thing is psychologically, I think that you mentioned that you kind of got ahead of yourself a little bit with this whole idea of like, I'm really going to quit my job soon. That is often a way to like self-sabotage by accident. So I think one of the things that is really important is for you to plan past it. Have you ever watched The Magic of Part-Time from Jim Rohn on YouTube?
No. No, I never watched that.
Okay, write that down. Everybody who's never watched that. It's a great, I think it's not too long. It's maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that. But it's a video. It's one of his speeches. And Jim Rohn's one of the GOATs for those of you who might not be familiar. He's one of the all-time OGs in sales, life philosophy. He's an old school guy. He's passed away now. But I used to listen to Jim all the time in the early part of my career, like 15 or so years ago. And I remember the magic of part-time being such a powerful catalyst because you're in this window that is temporary. And that window is the bridge between your current reality, your job, your 9 to 5, your business, whatever you're doing. And then you're starting to make like your escape strategy, right? So you're like 9 to 5, 9 to 5 doing this thing, and you start Enagic on the side and you have this vision of freedom and success and whatever the goals are. And you have this runway that for most people isn't too long, 12 months, 36 months, something in that window where your business is a part-time effort. You're doing it in evenings, mornings, weekends, filling it in your spare time, but you still have responsibilities that are considered a regular person's life. Make sense? You will only have this short runway opportunity for so long until you are past it and you go full time in your business, you quit your job, you start traveling, you start doing all this stuff. And then what happens is your relatability starts to get further and further away from the average person. Right now, if you're in a job, you are highly relatable because most likely your audience is also in a job. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's very important that you understand how to market this business when you are still doing similar things to others. And then once you get past this and you quit your job, like you said, you got to make sure that you're not just barely able to quit your job because then desperation will kick in. Your conversations will shift. People can tell that you need to make a sale to just pay your bills. So it's actually really good to get at least 6 months of your expenses cashed in the bank before you officially quit your job. Most people, they do it a little bit too soon. And a small percentage of them, maybe 5 to 10% of people who do it like the second they can, go on and they're fine because they just are high pressure, high stakes performers, like backs against the wall, 20 grand a month in expenses, and boom, they make it happen. But 90% of people, they fail. Too much pressure, can't handle it, don't make sales, get into a slump, and often they have to kind of backtrack and go get a job or backtrack and go back to the thing that they left, which is not really that ideal. So I always say, watch the Jim Rohn Magic of Part-Time and milk it. Do it as long as you can. Do it like an extra 6 to 12 months, longer than when you think you're ready to quit, because you'll give yourself a bit of a buffer. You will grow a bigger team. You'll have more duplication. You'll have more of a team. And then when you actually walk away from your career, it could be like this really big milestone in life where you really won't ever go back. There's not this like high risk chance that you will. So in my experience with the momentum and everything that you're saying, just be aware of what your self-talk is and be aware of how things are going. The lead quality sometimes is based on what you're putting out there, your ads, and always be testing new things. And then what else did you say here? You're still so early in your business. Like it's awesome that you're about to hit 4A, but that is such an early part of the overall compensation plan and team building and structure and stuff that what your most powerful focus needs to be is just your daily method of operation and being very, very consistent with that. So, for example, if you generate 10 leads a day with your ads, and then one day it goes down to 5 leads for some random reason, then you need to step in and go and talk to people watching your stories or follow up with leads from the past so that you still technically had 10 leads for that day. You fill in the gap. Don't just be like, oh, today was a hard day. I only got 5 leads. You get to choose. You're like, no, this is my minimum standard, 10 leads a day. Sometimes it's coming from ads, which gives me the maximum leverage, but other times maybe my ads slow down. So I'm going to supplement and I'm going to add in my own effort to reach out, to start conversations, to follow up with others so that technically you still did 10 in a day. And that keeps your efforts very consistent, which makes your momentum more consistent as well. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
So yeah, the final thing that I'll mention on this, which is coming from my own personal experience, is that in the early part of my business, like the first 3 years of my business, I was so relentlessly attacking my business. Like I was not waiting for anybody to get back to me. Like I basically did zero waiting. I was just on the last call and I was talking about how people talk about ghosting. Have you guys ever used that term before? Oh, my leads are ghosting me. I was not letting anyone ghost me. I was haunting you. The roles were reversed because I was so relentless in my follow-up. I was haunting your ass for real. Because until you said to me, Balazs, under no circumstances will I ever do this fucking business, no matter what. Like, do not ever contact me again, or I'll call the police, or I'll show up at your house. If unless it was that kind of a no, I was like, there's still a chance. I was such a blind optimist. And I would just follow up with people insanely to the point where they were like super annoyed. And I even had people say they'll buy a machine from me just so I stop like following up with them. And I'm like, great. And we both win. But it was like that. So I was such a yes, like I was so afraid of not making progress and I was so afraid of losing and having other people be right. Like, told you it was never going to work, told you it was a scam, told you you're never going to make money. Like that was literally like my nightmare. So I was going to willingly do whatever it took to not let that happen. And then I got my business to, I think it was 682-2, pretty good team going. I told the story before, but I'll say it again. So up until 682, which is 200 product sales, I knew every single sale happening in my business. When I received a check, commission, I looked at the name. I'm like, oh, there's Joey. I remember talking to Joey a few weeks ago at my house. Or there's Bob. Me and Bob talked at Starbucks, 3, 4 weeks ago. There was no surprises with my checks. I was involved in everything. Three-way calls, group presentations at my house. Nothing was online. Nothing was social media, really. And I remember getting a check right after I hit 682. And I looked at the name and I'm like, it doesn't register. Who the fuck is that? And then I remember going in my Facebook group and cussing my team out. How dare you guys put a sale through, without letting me know, and I didn't help you and I didn't answer your questions. And then I talked to my mentor about it and he kind of laughs. He's like, Blaj, this is kind of what you've been working towards. Like, this is what you want. This is a good thing. It means you're actually finally breaking out of like not being needed by everybody. And I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. And then the check started to come. So when that happened, I had to create boundaries. Okay. And the boundaries were like, I now had to basically give people a different expectation towards building this business because up until that point, I said yes to everything. And that yes was actually deeply rooted in fear of failure. And so I need you to basically check in with yourself is what are your actual deepest rooted fears around this business? Because it's not always fear of failure. Sometimes for people, it's fear of success. And that fear of success is actually a major issue in Enagic because the commissions are so big. The money potential here is so big that when we talk about $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 per month, it is actually kind of simple and it's within reach. Like you guys realize that to make $100,000 a month in just 8-point commissions is 10 direct sales a month. That's it, just 10. So now when you actually do the math, how many calls do you need to do for your closing percentage based on what you're doing right now in your business? How many calls do you need to do in a week or a month for you to have the opportunity to close 10 direct sales in a month? Do you know those numbers? Are you paying attention? If you're doing lead generation and sales calls, you need to know how many calls are you doing and what percentage of those calls buy an Agit, right? This is making sense for everybody? Okay, so then as you work your way up the compensation plan, you'll start making 3 points commission, 4 points commission, whatever. Eventually, when you get to 8 points commission, you get $8,000 on a quad sale, roughly. Now you take $100,000 in a month, divide it by 8. How many sales is that? Is it 12 or something? Now it's 12 quad sales if you do it yourself, but you're not factoring in group sales, any of that other part of the compensation plan. So what I always tell people is you need to reverse engineer your efforts to aim for $100,000 a month because the math is not so complicated. It's only 12 direct sales to hit that number. So then the question becomes, why are people not having more $100,000 months? Fear of success. They're terrified of that much money because they don't understand what to do with that money. They don't know how to do their taxes. They're afraid the government's going to take 50% of the money. They're afraid of their parents and their siblings and their wife and their children all asking for handouts and all these things. So there's actual psychological fear of being successful because they don't know how to handle what might happen as a result of that. And that's what keeps them self-sabotaging. That's what keeps them stuck. That's what keeps them making like okay money, couple sales here and there, nothing special, taking forever to get to 6A, all this stuff. So it's important for all of you to check in if you actually have fears that are correlated with winning, because winning has never been more within your reach than it is here. And that's scary. Does that make sense? Everybody thinks that they have a fear of failure, but it's actually less common in this business than fear of success. Because you log into the community, you go on to your weekly calls with your upline or your leader, and all these people are sharing stories. I made 30,000 this month and 50,000. You know what I mean? And what you guys think that's normal? Have you guys checked the average income in the country that you live in? People are hurting. People are struggling, right? It's hard times for people, but not in this world that we're in, not in this like ecosystem we're in. So, anyways, all I'm getting at here is be mindful. What I'm trying to say is there's a chance that your momentum is dropping from a self-sabotaging pattern of what happens if you make 20, 30, $50,000 a month? What happens if you do quit your job? What happens if you do start living this life? Are you afraid of the unknown? Are you afraid of the uncertain? Are you worried about the logistics of like, for example, taxation or any of that? Because maybe you are, maybe you're unaware, but dig into that a little bit because you have to make sure that your money mindset and your energy is ready to hold a serious up leveling in your income, right? Like your income now, if you don't mind sharing, on average, your monthly income, what is it with your
Uh,
job?
2,000 euros.
Okay. So just imagine with a couple of sales, you could be at 20,000 euros a month with Imagine. 10x. It's exciting, right? You're like, oh my gosh, the possibilities. I could fly, I could travel, I could quit my job. But at the exact same time, you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do with that kind of money? Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does. I
And
never
let's
thought about it, but it's definitely something I can look into.